going on, guys? For this video, what we're going to do is we're going to reflect back on our 2022 experience and talk about our top 10 new coaster credits we got. He and I have been to some different parks this year where we got new credits. Like, for example, I visited Indiana Beach, Carowinds, Universal Orlando, Worlds of Fun, and also Busch Gardens Tampa as well. Ryan, where did you go to?
My first park was Knott's Berry Farm. The second park was Disneyland, but I've already been there. Third park was, trying to think of it. Oh, Universal Studios Hollywood.
And he also did Disney's California Adventure
Disney's California Adventure, yes. Six Flags Magic Mountain and SeaWorld San Diego. And Belmont Park as well.
I was out in the East getting some new credits last year. He was out West. And so, since you started off last time, is it right if I can start us off for this one?
Yep.
Alright, my 10th best new credit I got this year. He's gonna think this is low. Copperhead Strike at Carowinds. I got 2 rides on this. Once in the front row, once in the back row. And the launches on this ride definitely were not strong, like some of the weaker launches I've experienced. But I will say, the airtime on that was really impressive. Like, I was blown away by it. And normally I'm exclusively a front row rider for Forward's launch coasters. I am still debating on whether I like the front row or back row on Copperhead, because the airtime on Copperhead was way better in the back, but the launches were better up front. So I really don't know. I was super impressed by this ride, and I have it as my number 3 at Carowinds.
My number 10 new credit was at SeaWorld San Diego, and it is Emperor, the 2022 new dive coaster. I would say this really surprised me of how good it was, because I wasn't expecting a whole lot going into it, but it keeps its pace throughout the whole ride, and it just doesn't stop. You get airtime now on the first drop, lots of intensity on the first drop, because I'm pretty sure I grayed out every single time on that first drop. And the intensity was very good for a dive coaster. I would say it's the most intense dive coaster that I've done. All the inversions were flowy, and it just glides in the brakes. But it could use a station.
That's like the ongoing meme with Emperor. The station's like unfinished. And he mentioned that was the most intense dive coaster. I feel like that could very well be my favorite dive coaster, because I do tend to prefer intensity over airtime in a lot of cases. Since he said Emperor's the most intense dive coaster, I think it could be a really, really good ride. My number 9 best new credit I got this year was Intimidator. He definitely disagrees with me on this one.
I don't like it because the ride ops. That's basically the reason why I don't like this ride.
I understand how it feels when you have to deal with annoying ride operators. I got 2 rides on it, once in the front row, once in the back row. On my second ride in the back row, they didn't even really push down. They just pulled up on my restraint, and that left me with a ton of room. So I got some really, really good airtime on it. That being said, the ride was still one of the weaker B&M hypers I've done. It's not the weakest, because that goes to Raging Bull, because that did not give any airtime, unfortunately, from my experience. Intimidator, I feel like it did have some good airtime, at least in the back row. Now, the front, it did have some good airtime as well, but pretty much everything about that ride was better in the back. I mean, obviously the sense of speed wasn't as good, but you ride Intimidator for the airtime. And the back row has more airtime. It does live up to its name of Intimidator, because the trim brakes on those hills do hit.
My row 11 ride was just, I got 2 moments of airtime during the whole ride, and the second half, would I even call it a second half? It literally just almost valleys over like every single element in that second half, and it doesn't look good.
I would maybe call it like a last fourth or even something like that, because like a second half, that's a bit of a stretch.
Yeah, it really took a long time for the first half to get finished when I rode it, and I thought it should have ran faster.
I still think Intimidator is a good ride, but I still have multiple other B&M hypers that I've ridden ahead of it.
My number 9 spot is Manta at SeaWorld San Diego. I got to ride both of them this year, the one in SeaWorld Orlando and SeaWorld San Diego, and I slightly prefer the one at SeaWorld San Diego. Maybe because I'm a very big fan of mock multi-launches, and all the airtime that shouldn't be airtime. Like, Copperhead Strike has a lot of moments that don't look like they give airtime, but it pops you out of your seat for no reason. Manta does the same thing, but on a smaller scale. The first launch sequence during that tunnel is like one of my favorite launch sequences that I've ever seen. Bear in mind, I haven't done Velocicoaster yet. I think I counted like 6 moments of airtime on that ride, and it gets pretty intense toward the end when you go to that 180-degree turn after that trimmed hill after the second launch. But I got to ride it 4 times. That trimmed hill didn't trim at all. So I really, really enjoy it for the experience.
I was at SeaWorld San Diego back in 2018, and I only got 1 ride on Manta, but I don't really remember it like at all. I mean, I remember the pre-launch sequence, like Ryan said. He said it was a good launch sequence. I really liked it, especially the music they play in the launch tunnel. And then the first launch did pack a decent punch to it. I would say that's probably the best.
Best mock launch.
Yeah, because I mean, besides that, you got like, what else have I done? I've done
Time Traveler.
Time Traveler.
Copperhead Strike.
Yeah, and while we're back on the topic of Copperhead real fast, I forgot to mention the hang time moments that this thing had. The hang time that this thing had was really good, but Mr. Freeze Rollback's hang time was better. Overall, you like Manta, right?
Yeah, Manta's a really fun coaster, and I like that Zero car.
Yeah, the Zero car on Manta at San Diego is pretty sick. I actually really like it. I do need to get back there to get some more rides on, which I might be doing sometime in the not so distant future. I think it was like 24 or 25 maybe. Not sure. Number 8 is Hagrid at Islands of Adventure. A lot of people would probably rank this coaster higher. I personally couldn't do it. The reason why it does make the list to begin with is because of the ride I got in the front row bike seat. I only intended to ride it once because there's a multiple different reasons why. The first one is that the line would always be really long for it, and you don't really get to choose your seat, which I think we can all agree the biggest pet peeve of amusement parks is no preferred seating. Since Hagrid doesn't allow you to choose your seat, I knew if I wanted to get front row bike, I would have to get up extremely early in the morning, which I was up at 5:15 a.m. to be first in line for early entry. Then I would have to go straight for Hagrid in order to be first in line and get front row bike seat, and I managed to do that. I did ride it once in row 4, and it was nowhere near as good as front row bike. Because, like, first of all, you got the unblocked view up front. You actually feel like you're driving a motorcycle through the Forbidden Forest. And I was leaning into the turns on the ride, and I was just having a blast with it. I forgot to mention one other reason why I only wanted to ride Hagrid once. The drop track. I am not a fan of drop tracks. On my first ride, the drop track wasn't, like, that bad. Like, it didn't feel like a drop tower. Now, my second ride, it did. So, not a big fan of that. But overall, I mean, the whole experience with Hagrid outside the drop track is great. The launches were good, and the onboard audio, which I'm a sucker for onboard audio, and there's at least 2 others in that same resort that you'll be seeing later on this list. Hagrid is really good if you're in the front row bike, and if I had not gotten front row bike, it probably wouldn't have made this list. That's the reason why I have Hagrid at number 8.
And I think Hagrid is a world-class family coaster. I mean, pretty sure it's my favorite family coaster I've ever done because I'm a big Harry Potter fan. And it keeps its pace pretty good, and the storyline is good, and I like the drop track unlike he does.
That was my number 8. What's your number 8?
My number 8 is Hang Time at Knott's Berry Farm. It's a controversial coaster. Well, I actually really enjoy it. I got a Zen ride on it, first ride of the day. Looking down that drop is pretty intimidating for a regular person. That drop actually gives a lot of good airtime. The first hill, some nice floater, and then you get into your first and only hang time moment of the whole ride. Cutback is pretty forceful, and then my favorite part of the ride, the step down into the Cobra Roll. And that step down flung me out of my seat that first time I rode it, and it caught me by surprise because I had not expected it at all. I thought it would be like, no, it flung me like real hard. And then that Cobra Roll, it's all right, and then the pop into the brakes is really good too. I thought it wasn't rough at all. Like, it was really smooth because a lot of what Gerstlauer is known for is having rattly rides. This one I thought was really smooth, and I've done Tantrum at Darien Lake, and I think that's even smoother than Hang Time, which is crazy to think because Hang Time's already really smooth.
I was expecting it to be a lot better than it turned out to be because when that ride first opened, I heard a lot of people saying it was the best ride at Knott's Berry Farm, and I'm like, really? How can you say that when Ghost Rider and Accelerator exists? Spoiler alert right now, you will not be seeing Accelerator on Ryan's list because it was closed for him, so he didn't get to ride it, unfortunately.
And Montezuma's Revenge as well.
He only got to ride Pony Express, which that's like the weakest launch coaster at the park, and it's very unfortunate that he didn't get to ride Accelerator or Montezuma. For me, Hang Time was very disappointing because I had very high expectations for it, and it didn't meet them.
I was the opposite. I didn't have very high expectations for it, so I got blown away.
Yeah, because I was still riding it with all that massive hype around it, and didn't live up to the hype for me, unfortunately. So maybe next time I'll like it more because I'll just have a different mindset about it going in because I won't have as high of expectations. Number 7 is my top GCI that I'd ridden, and this is Prowler at Worlds of Fun. This is the ride that I wish Mystic Timbers was. If you've watched my channel for a while, then you know that I am not a big fan of Mystic Timbers. I did get to ride it in 2022 while holding up the lap bar, and my opinion was the exact same as it was in 2020 and 2021, so I don't know. It did not have the airtime that everyone says it has, but Prowler, that coaster, had the airtime that I wish Mystic Timbers had. Really the main ride that pushed it into my top 10 credits for the year. I think it was already up there, but what solidified it on this list for sure was this one ride I got during Halloween Haunt at Worlds of Fun. I don't try to get too much airtime, but I happened to get a one-click ride by complete accident, and I held up the lap bar during that ride. Wow. The airtime on that thing was absolutely incredible. Like, it was so strong, and I was like, wow, this thing is actually a really, really good ride. 9 rides on Prowler are phenomenal, and it's just overall a very solid wooden coaster that I feel like is underrated. I feel like people don't talk about it too much. Maybe it'll get some more attention when Zambezi Zinger opens up later this year, which I might get back out there to check it out, and maybe I'll be able to ride Prowler again, see if it's just as good as I remembered. It may not be the smoothest ride, but it's out of control, relentless, and in my opinion is a good example of what a really good wooden coaster should be, and that's why it's number 7 on my list.
I haven't been on it yet, and I plan to go to Worlds of Fun this year, so I hope I get to ride it this year. My number 7 is Silver Bullet at Knott's Berry Farm. A lot of people scoff at this choice, but I really enjoyed this invert. Everyone said it was like one of the worst inverts that they've ever been on, and like bottom tier. I think it's like more of high tier than anything else. First drop is the worst element on the ride, but that's because it's so shallow. Everything else after the first drop is great. Loop, pretty forceful. The overbank, very weird element for an invert, which I like. You go through the Cobra roll and you're like, it's not that great yet. But then you go into that 0G roll and then helix and you're like, it's getting better. And then the finale hits, and that's the best part of the ride. You get absolutely thrown by the corkscrew, right?
Yeah.
Okay. The first corkscrew, it goes through it way too quick. Like, I think it's the quickest corkscrew I've ever experienced. The airtime hill after that actually gives some decent floater airtime. Then you go through another corkscrew, and this one whips you even more. And then you go through the 540 degree helix, which really pulls some G's, and I think more G's than Raptor's helix. And I got 11 rides on it, and every single ride, that helix was pinning me to my seat.
I only got 1 ride on Silver Bullet, and I don't remember it too well, so I feel like I need to get back out there and give it another shot. And Ryan says here, people talk about Silver Bullet being the weakest invert. It could be worse. It could be Patriot at Worlds of Fun. That is a low tier invert. Like, I was not as impressed with Patriot as I think I was originally expecting to be. It's not a bad ride, but Silver Bullet, he says that it has the quickest corkscrews ridden. I don't know if I would be able to agree with that, even if I did get a
Hulk.
reride.
I forgot about Hulk.
Well, yeah, because you got Hulk and also Batman on the ride. Those corkscrews are ridiculous.
It was running like those on a hot day. That's how fast it was running.
Really. Quick honorable mention to Afterburn's corkscrew. That's also a really good corkscrew bit. Afterburn did not make the list, unfortunately, for my top 10 new credits. Number 6 for me is Hollywood Rip Ride Rocket at Universal Studios Florida. This is the only coaster at Universal Studios Florida to make the list. It's kind of a default for me because that was the only coaster that I rode that I felt like was worthy enough to be in the top 10 new credits I had ridden for the year. I say that because Revenge of the Mummy was unfortunately down for me when I was at Universal back in June, so I didn't get to experience it. And maybe that could have cracked the list, but I won't know until I actually get on it and ride it. Brian said he rode the one at Universal Studios Hollywood this past October.
I did, and it was my 250th credit.
That was not supposed to happen because what else was closed for you?
Yeah, the Matterhorn bobsleds, the first steel tubular coaster. That was going to be my 250, but the second time it was closed for me.
Yep, he missed out on it twice, and I can't even imagine missing out on such a historic coaster twice. Back to Hollywood Rip Ride Rocket. I didn't know if I would love it or hate it because I had heard from several people that it was rough, and roughness can really ruin a ride for me. At the same time, I was super excited to play some songs from the Coaster Secret song list. I didn't know if I would like it or hate it because of it. I ended up enjoying it, which I really appreciated. I got 10 rides on it, and this thing is definitely not a smooth ride, in my opinion. Like, Brian says it's not too rough. I think it's decently rough at times. Like, I think depending on where you sit, it can make or break your ride. This is one of the only coasters I've ridden where I feel like it does not matter where you sit in order to get a good ride. Like, for me, I enjoyed all 6 rows on Rip Ride Rocket, but I think I had a slight preference for the front row because while I thought the airtime was good in the front row and the back, I thought the front was a smoother ride experience in general, and that maybe give it the slight edge. And of course, playing some songs from the Secret Song List, which I did Code 703, which is For Whom the Bell Tolls by Metallica, Code 715, which is Wake Up Dead by Megadeth, and Code 708, which is Let's Go by Ministry. These are not the only ones I did, but those are like my 3 favorite songs I did on the ride. As for what the ride does that makes it so good, the airtime on this thing is like ridiculous. Like, some of the strongest airtime I've experienced in Florida, to be honest. Like,
Straight ejector.
yes, there's no floater on Rip Ride Rocket like at all. It's all ejector. Like, if you want floater airtime in Orlando, go ride Mako. There's also some really intense positive G's on this ride, like America, the far turnaround is really intense. Like, that was a great out moment for me every single ride. I really do wish that Hollywood Rip Ride Rocket was smoother, because I feel like if it was smoother, it would be maybe a little bit higher for me on my overall list. But I can't really complain, because the ride itself, despite the rougher ride it gave, I thought it was awesome. And that's one of the only coasters I can look past the roughness for.
I have something to add on Rip Ride Rocket.
Okay.
So it's ridiculous that mid-course brake runs make the ride. Right in the front row, you get ejector going into them. If you sit in the back row, you get ejector coming off of them.
Even in the front row, I did get some airtime coming out of it. In the back, I did get some airtime going into it. So, I mean, like I said, they're both equal in terms of airtime, but I think the front is a little bit smoother, so therefore I give it the edge.
My number 6 would be Apocalypse at Six Flags Magic Mountain. This is the roughest GCI I've been on, but I looked past the roughness because it was only like a little bit of jackhammering, but that was it. The airtime on it was really surprising, and the theming was good. That queue line is really cool. I rode it during Fright Fest, and they had all these different things surrounding the queue and stuff like that. That first airtime hill is one of my favorites. You just get popped here and there. You're throwing around side to side. Then you get a straight section, which is the station flyby, which I love those elements. Everything else was floater, but any GCI that I've been on has been pretty good and are in my top 100. I just like the company, and they make great stuff. Apocalypse is just another one that is a really good coaster by them.
When I rode Apocalypse in 2018, I didn't think much of it, but then again, I rode it before they got that extensive track work done on it, and ever since they got that track work done, I've heard several people call it one of the best rides in Magic Mountain. I feel like I need to get back there and try it again, because really any coaster in California I need to give another go, because
2018.
Yeah, 2018, it's been over 4 years, and almost going on 5 years since my last rides on each of those. So I feel like I need to give Apocalypse another shot, see what the hype is all about. I don't know if it'll dethrone Prowler or not, because
No, it won't.
I don't know, it could be out there, but I think it could potentially be better than Mystic Timbers, because given my rides on Mystic Timbers, I feel like that's a fairly low bar to clear. Breaking into my top 5 for new credits of this year, Mamba. This is a ride that I had absolutely no idea would rank this high, let alone anywhere on my top 10, really. But whatever the park did to disable the mid-course brake run in 2022, that really sold the ride for me. It already had a great sense of speed and some awesome positives in the first half. And then you slide on through the mid-course brake run, assuming you don't get trimmed too bad. The return run. Holy frick. The airtime is unreal. I'm gonna come out and say it. I prefer Mamba's finale to Magnum's finale. Yeah, Magnum may have the stronger airtime in the finale, but it wasn't anywhere nearly as painful on Mamba, so therefore I enjoyed it more. And basically on Mamba, with the airtime I got launched out of my seat so suddenly, and then I didn't really have a chance to land back in my seat, because like, as soon as I landed back in my seat, I shot up out of my seat again. I was like, what in the world is this ride? Like, I was just laughing the whole time because it was so chaotic. You wouldn't expect a ride to be that wild, but Mamba proves that if you do something with the mid-course, it really can help the ride experience. I really wonder if 2022 is just a fluke or not, and if I do get back to World of Fun to ride Zambezi Zinger this year, I wonder if I'll like Mamba more or less than I did last year. For now, I think it deserves to be in the top 5 for new credits I rode, especially for the night rides I got. I got one awesome front row night ride on it during Haunt this past October, and the sense of speed in the first half was absolutely ridiculous, because it was flying so fast. It just does not slow down. And then the mid-course wasn't on, so the whole ride was an absolute riot. And really, that was a ride that solidified it in my top 5 new credits for the year. Like Brian has said before, he hasn't been to Worlds of Fun, so he has not been able to ride Mamba yet.
I'm gonna try to do it this year though. My number 5 coaster that I got to ride this year is Tatsu, B&M Flyer from Magic Mountain. What I've been told was that Pretzel Loop is one of the most intense and demonic elements ever created. I say yes, it is, but I also really liked it because it made me gray out every single time I rode it. And I only got to ride Tatsu in the back row, so all the inversions were pretty whippy in the back row. I would say the layout is perfect. The ending section really makes the ride for me though. The pretzel loop, the airtime that you get coming out of it, and then that intense turn at the end, and then you get a pop of airtime going into the brakes as well. It's just a very intense coaster from that last third of the ride, I guess.
Yeah, something along those lines.
The first half is flowing versions and an overbank, and then the last half is intense and like
Tries to kill you.
yes, tries to kill you, which is crazy. The other flyers try to kill you at the beginning. This one tries to kill you at the end, so that's why I like it more.
I actually thought Tatsu was really trying to kill me the entire ride, and I didn't like it as much as I thought it would. But then again, I think it was because it was a little too intense for me to really enjoy a lot. Then again, I can understand why people would have this as their favorite flyer, but for me, Manta at SeaWorld Orlando is like the best flyer that I've done because it's like the perfect intensity amount. Maybe if I go back to Magic Mountain and ride Tatsu again, I might like it a bit more, which I'm pretty sure I will, because I only got one ride on Tatsu when I was last there. It was a good flyer, but it's not quite as good as Manta. Now we've made it into the top 4 on this list, and all these are elite rides in both of our opinion. Now, I'm not saying that all the rides I have on my list he thinks are elite and vice versa. You guys are gonna definitely disagree with me on this one, and I'm ready for the feedback, but number 4 is Iron Gwazi. Some of you guys may have this at number 1. I don't blame you. That thing's incredible. There are just a few more coasters that I like more than Iron Gwazi, but that doesn't mean Iron Gwazi is a bad ride. It's not even closer. That's in my top 10 overall. There was no dead spots, and it was overall just a chaotic ride from start to finish, whereas Steel Vengeance, it almost felt like half a ride to me because the mid-course killed the second half. I think the first drop is the best first drop I've ever experienced. I have done Time Traveler's first drop. That one's close, but not quite there. And I've not done El Toro or Sky Rush yet either. I honestly think I might like Iron Gwazi more than both of those, to be honest with you. And I'll find out for myself, hopefully on both of them later this summer. First drop is incredible. The Death Roll is a wild inversion, but there's another version that's very similar to it that I think is better, and we'll get to that one in a little bit. People like the wait room so much. Well, I thought it was really good. I thought it didn't hit until later on at night because it was fully warmed up, and I don't know why though. It is. The pacing is just relentless. I think I've already said that, but this thing legitimately tries to throw you out of the train from start to finish. Like, if you're looking for a tame ride, do not ride Iron Gwazi. This thing tries to kill you. It's wild. Like I said before, I can totally understand why someone would have this as their number 1 in the world. For me, I just can't quite put it up there.
Although I've visited Florida this year, I haven't done Iron Gwazi. It was in January when I visited.
I wonder where Iron Gwazi will rank for him once he finally rides it. But for me, Iron Gwazi falls just outside the top 3 for new credits I got this year.
My number 4 is Ghost Rider in Knott's Berry Farm. Best CCI I've ever been on. There's only one thing wrong with the ride. Well, it's kind of a major thing, but the first half is lackluster. First drop's not anything to write home about. It's like a kind of weak drop. That first airtime hill, some decent floater over it. Then you get laterals and laterals and more laterals until you hit the drop off the mid-course, which is the best element on the ride. If you're in the back row, you get yeeted. And then the airtime hill following it is almost the same power. That second half feels like a different ride than the first half. It's just so much more intense, better airtime, and so much faster pacing than the first half. Bold statement, but Ghost Rider's second half is the best second half of any wood coaster, except for one instance.
Just out of curiosity, which one is that? Are you talking about Voyage's return run?
And Night.
Okay, yeah, well, that's a given. Like, I rode Ghost Rider in 2018 as well. I wonder how the drop out the mid-course will held up, because I never rode back row back that much. Next time I'll go back to it for sure, give it a shot in the back. The closest thing I would say that I could maybe compare it to is a drop off the mid-course on the Boss when that thing runs trimless and you're in the back car.
It's definitely stronger than that. I don't think it's even a contest. There's no floater airtime in the second half until that Helix.
This was also my 100th coaster as well, so it's pretty cool that Ghost Rider is in his top 5 for new credits we got last year.
8 rides on it, and all of them were magnificent.
Did you ever get a night ride on it?
I wish I had, but I didn't.
I did get a night ride on it.
I did not get tickets to Not Scary Farm. No, I did not. It was $54, and I said no.
Yeah, because I have had the chance to do Ghost Rider at night, and I remember being a pretty good night ride. My number 3, I know this one's going to cause some debate, the Incredible Hulk coaster. Yes, I do have this ride ranked 1 spot ahead of Iron Gwazi, but that's mainly because of the on-ride soundtrack. I know that's a dumb reason to rank it higher, but I couldn't help it. Basically, the soundtrack emphasized Hulk's insane sense of speed, which in turn made the ride feel far more intense than usual. This might actually be the most intense coaster that I have ever ridden. From the moment you launch out of the launch tunnel to the moment you hit the mid-course brake run especially, you're going like full speed, no hindrances of your speed anywhere. Like, you tear through everything. Like, every single element tries to like knock you out, I guess. I don't know, it's one way to put it, but basically the thing is super intense. Depending on how fast the ride's running, you can slam to a stop on the mid-course. I got 2 rides where it was running way too fast to the twister section and in turn caused the ride to slam to a stop on the mid-course for a few seconds. Normally it slows down a little bit and then carries on into the second half. When I slammed to a stop on the mid-course, it provided some wild hang time on the second corkscrew because of how slow it took in. It was a nice surprise, but the on-ride soundtrack is what puts Hulk extremely high for me. Like, without the soundtrack, I think I'd have it maybe like, I honestly don't know if I'd have Rip Ride Rocket ranked above it or not. I mean, I might. I'd probably have it somewhere like in between like Rocket or Prowler. The soundtrack alone was so incredible, no pun intended, that I had to put it up in my top 3. speed. Out of all the coasters I've ridden, on my very last ride, this is one of the only ones where I was genuinely sad when I hit the final brakes, because I was sad to know that I won't be able to ride this thing for a while. So if that doesn't explain to you how much I really like this coaster, then I don't know what will. Hulk, for now, deserves a top 3 spot, although like I said before, I can understand why you'd have Iron Gwazi above this.
I like Hulk. It's just too much for me. I would say it's on par with the most intense coaster I've been on, I-305. I would say it's on par with that. I could only ride it 4 times a day, and then I was done. How many times did you get to ride it in a single day?
I was there for 5 days. I got 39 rides. Most I did in one day was 15. Yeah, I almost got 16, but I was like, I think I barely missed they closed the line right before I got there from number 16 of the day and number 40. So I was still so salty about that. 39 rides I got on it were incredible. Don't pun intended.
My number 3 is new for 22, Wonder Woman Flight of Courage at Six Flags Magic Mountain, the newest single rail, tallest, fastest single rail coaster, and longest. I didn't get to ride it the first day I was at Magic Mountain, which made me upset, to say the least, because it's brand new, and I think it was about 4 months too old.
I don't know when it opened, but it opened like a few months prior. And I think also part of the reason why you didn't get to ride, because you said the park was absolutely deserted on that
It
first
was
day.
deserted on that Friday, which was crazy to think about. I got like 6 Zen raids that day, which is insane. The second day I got to ride it, and the third day I got to ride it, and it blew my expectations out of the water. I got to ride Jersey Devil 2 days after it opened, and I say, pretty good. Not anything near the original.
He had done Railblazer at California's Great America, which I myself have not done. And I honestly don't know if I will get to do it, because CGA might be closing soon.
I got last ride of the day, and train slammed to a stop in the mid-course, and I just lost it then.
Oh, was that on Jersey Devil?
Yeah, it was on Jersey
Oh,
Devil.
gosh.
That whole problem was completely fixed by Wonder Woman. It was trimless every single time, and that's like perfect. That second half was unreal. That's why I have it like 10 or 11 spots higher than Jersey Devil, because it's just so much faster pace. Like, the airtime's stronger, it's whippier, and is relentless from start to finish. And a lot of people complain about the Raptors restraints. I don't feel any problem with them. Wonder Woman has some of the best ejector airtime in California. That's why it's my number 3 new credit for this year.
Now we're in the top 2, and number 2 is the coaster that I'm rocking on this shirt, and this is Fury 325 at Carowinds. This is my type of ride. The sense of speed on that thing, top of the line. Like, very few coasters can top it. Like, really, I think the only one that top it, Millennium Force or I-305. But other than that, like, Fury is top of the line. Since speed is like my favorite thing on a coaster, I can't not put Fury extremely high on the list. I did get to ride the back row once. Well, I thought the first drop was good. It didn't even come anywhere near the front row for me. Like, front row on Fury is the best experience at Carowinds by a landslide. Like, nothing even comes closer. Like, yeah, Copperhead, Strike, and Intimidator, and Afterburn. I did enjoy all of those, but none of those came anywhere near Fury for me. This is definitely B&M's best coaster, at least out of the ones that I've ridden, and I can only understand why people would have this thing maybe even as their number 1, even though I feel like not many people call it their number 1 coaster nowadays. It's also got some good airtime as well, but you ride Fury for the speed. Whereas if you want more airtime at Carowinds, just go ride Intimidator or Copperhead Strike.
That's where I come in. I'm saying Fury has more airtime than Intimidator, which I'm strongly to believe that, but Fury is a masterpiece. I don't think there's anything wrong with it other than that Helix.
Fury originally was my top new credit of the year, but after giving it some more thought, there's like one coaster that I have to put above Fury, and at this point, I think you all know which one it is. But before we get to there, what is your number 2 coaster you rode this year?
X2. I didn't think I was gonna like X2 to begin with, because I've not liked 40 free spins. Every single 40 free spin I just didn't like. One time I grayed out and blacked out at the same time, and I was just like,
my.
I called it a day after that happened.
Which free spin was this?
That was the one at Six Flags Great America.
Great America. Okay, I have ridden that one, and unfortunately I'll be riding the one at Great Adventure this year, and I'm not excited for it.
It does not feel anything like a 40 free spin. That first drop gotta be one of the most demonic elements ever created, because you're facing straight down at the ground. 215-foot drop. And I think it's my second favorite drop I've ever done. First ride on it was a back row ride, and I said, yeah, I don't know if I like it better than Wonder Woman or
Another
like
coaster that we'll get to later on.
or Ghost Rider. I would put it in the middle of those 3. Then I got a front row night ride on it and was laughing my head off the entire time. And I don't know, the intensity, the bobbing up and down the whole single ride is just crazy.
I absolutely despised it.
I don't know why I liked it so much. It's just a blur. The first ride was a blur. The second ride was like one of the most memorable coaster experiences I've ever had. It was like surreal that I finally got to ride a giant 4-dimensional coaster, and I liked it. It made me more excited to go on Ejinaika or Dino Conda.
Since I absolutely despise X2, I feel like I'm gonna hate those two, because I heard some people say that if you hate X2, you're gonna hate those two even more, but if you like X2, you're gonna love those two even more. So I feel like I'm in trouble. For my top ranked coaster of the year, I mentioned that there was one coaster that I did move above Fury, and that coaster is the one, the only Velocicoaster at Islands of Adventure. This coaster is perfect. What else is there to be said about it? I feel like the only nitpick I have with that ride is that the restraints staple you a lot easier, but in terms of comfort, they're like some of the best you'll find anywhere. Like, there was one ride that actually was part of a promo shoot apparently, where they made you hold up the lap bar, or hold on to the lap bar I should say. I did the trick where like I held up the lap bar trying to get some airtime. That didn't help. So I ended up staple, which meant the airtime wasn't as good as I think it could have been, but I feel like this ride wasn't built for airtime. Like, it was really just about the whole overall experience. The launches on this ride, first one was way more intense than I originally expected, and the second launch, that sucker's an absolute ride, because you're already going at a decently fast speed, and then all of a sudden you just shoot off to like 70 miles an hour. It's a crazy sensation. The top hat gave some pretty good airtime up front, and I did not bother riding the back on this ride, because it's a forwards launch coaster, and if you know me for a while, then I'm exclusively a front row rider for forwards launch coasters. Like I actually recently just said with Copperhead Strike. The first half I did enjoy running through the Raptor paddock and around all the rockwork and stuff. Really where Velocicoaster shines is at the end, because you have a stall, which is good. It's not a bad element by any means. Apparently like there's some weird lateral kink to it, which I didn't notice it. Apparently that is there. You also have a twisted outer bank, and then you have like two different, like one overbank, also like one's like a wave turn. Then you have the flippin' Mosasaurus roll. Oh my gosh, is this thing wild. This is by far the best inversion of any coaster, period. It's funny that Hulk has what I consider to be the best collection of inversions, yet none of them are as good as this Mosasaurus roll, which is insane to think about, because Hulk's zero-G roll, it's so high up there for me. With the Mosasaurus roll, it just tries to throw you out of the train head first straight into the lake, and it's just crazy. Like, especially if you let your body go limp, that thing left me terrified on my first ride, because it was taking that maneuver so fast, and it was like, wow. This coaster is my number one steel coaster, and my number two coaster overall, and it would be my number one coaster if it wasn't for Voyage. Velocicoaster is the prime example of a complete package. Like, it's got everything. I know, like, people talk about, like, how Maverick is, like, a complete package. While I do agree with that, Velocicoaster is, like, a next level Maverick. It's impossible to not have a good time on it. Like, you'll walk off loving every single second of it. And, Ryan, you think that might be your number one coaster when you get on it?
It's my number one most anticipated coaster that I want to ride.
Because he's a huge fan of the Jurassic World, Jurassic Park franchise, like, same type of thing. You like theming in a ride, does that, or?
I do like theming in a ride.
Since it really combines, like, everything he likes on a coaster, I could totally see Velocicoaster dethrone Steel Adventures as number one. And I'm not just saying that, like, I genuinely think it could happen.
I think it could happen too, because all those elements look so good.
I haven't done it myself, I can safely say that it's a work of art. It deserves the number one coaster that I rode for the first time in 2022.
My number one coaster for the first time 2022 is Twisted Colossus at Six Flags Magic Mountain. New RMC. I'm really happy to get 2 RMCs this past year. This one just felt different from pretty much all the other RMCs I rode. This one felt longer than any other one I've ridden, because that second chain lift.
That's because it is longer. You like got like a whole extra minute or so of ride time thrown in there.
Yeah, and the dueling aspect of this does not make or break the ride for me, like it does for some people. It is my second favorite RMC that I've ridden out of the 10 I've done. It's really up there in my rankings. Number 6 to be exact. First drop's phenomenal. The speed hill, I think it's the best speed hill on any RMC. Then that crazy ejector hill after that, and then the high five element, better on the green side, and then that drop on the blue side. I strongly believe that is the best moment on that ride. And then you have the second best airtime moment on the ride with that camelback under the Top Gun stall. Every single hill delivers on this ride, which you cannot say that about a whole lot of coasters in this day and age, except for most of the RMCs. I was just having so much fun on this. I think I got 20 rides on it, which is crazy to think, because 20 times 4. I was on this thing for over an hour.
What? Okay, that is something I never known about. Like, that's crazy to think about.
That I was on a coaster for over an hour on my trip. The most I had to wait for was 30 minutes, and the night rides were so good on this thing, and it doesn't stop. That zero G roll on the blue side, I would say, is the best zero G roll other than Steel Vengeance's Heaven Roll. It gives lots of lateral forces as well once you're going through it, and you whip through it pretty fast. It is a full package for me, except for the theming. That's like the only thing that I have to gripe about this coaster, but it doesn't need it. I just love the thing. The blue and green sides dueling, and you get so much ride time. It's a parking lot coaster, and I would say it's the best parking lot coaster I've ever ridden.
Yeah, especially since you have like the dumpster fire that is scream right next door, but you didn't get to ride that.
No, it was closed.
Yeah, I heard it just reopened fairly recently.
Twisted Colossus is one of the great engineering works of art in the industry. I would say it's the best dueling coaster ever built.
Absolutely. I feel like Twisted Colossus has become like extremely underrated. Like, people seem to hate this thing now, and I don't know why. It's sad that people don't praise it as much as I think they used to. So I feel like, if anything, I feel like people need to start praising Twisted Colossus more. Like, it's so good, and it deserves a lot more love than it gets.
The only dueling coaster that could beat it that we know about is the one going to Epic Universe.
I still think Twisted Colossus might have a beat.
I still think Twisted Colossus will have that one beat, but we'll wait and see.
That will conclude our video on the top 10 coasters we rode for the first time in 2022. Be sure to let us know what other videos you would want to see us discuss. We're thinking about doing some video for, I think we were going to like do like the best coasters like at Kings Island we had written sometime soon.
Yeah.
And also, I know what Trevor I got, but I don't know what he's got going next. So I think at some point we might try and do a video where we talk about like the top 10 most anticipated coasters we'll be riding in 2023. So if you have any other ideas along those lines, feel free to comment those down below, and we'll pick out some of the best ones. Please make sure to leave a like on this video and comment what you enjoyed this video. And also, like I said before, feel free to comment any ideas you have. And if you're new to this channel, consider subscribing for more content just like this. That is all for this video, and until then, we'll see you guys later.